We got more Daywalkers. You might have not heard of her, this being known as Bloodline, daughter of Blade. See, she's a bit intriguing. Her name is Brielle Brooks. She's a daywalker like her dad. But a lot of her life, she didn't even know she was special because she had a spell put on her to hide her from magic users so she can kind of live peacefully without being disturbed or get hunted. Because Blade knew if his enemies found out that he had a kid, they would go after her. We can literally see her sit down, meet Blade, talk to Blade about all her nature, about her mother was human. One of Blade's fathers was human as well, but his second father was a vampire, Deacon Frost. He fed off my mother while she was in labor. She died, but he was changed. He was found by a hunter on the streets of London who taught him to hunt vampires. They called him the Daywalker, name self-explanatory. Then she was born a quarter vampire. He didn't know what it would mean for her due to his genetics. He even tried retiring for her. You can't retire a reputation that's near a century old. Her father's enemies, and beyond that, his legacy means there are many out there who want to prove themselves by besting him. His enemies you can hide from, just not forever. That's why he made a deal with Doctor Strange, like I already said, to keep her hidden from the supernatural world, basically in Marvel. And something interrupted the magic. My question is to Marvel, I wonder if they will keep on using her or will she get swept under the rug eventually? Because she has some decent appearances so far, despite her having such a little bit of comic appearances. She's met quite a few Marvel characters already. Her only main weakness is her power being up and down because she's depowered during the daytime and gets her full power at nighttime. Let's analyze her strength. Despite this apparent weaknesses, her strength sometimes will skyrocket to where it's uncontrollable, where she's even shocked at how much pressure she puts behind her throw. We see her have the actual raw muscle to rip car doors off the hinges, and we've seen her muscles clash with some strong vampire tier type beings, supernatural type beings. Now, this is where it gets tricky. She doesn't have a lot of occasions of showcasing her muscle, but she's got literally the same genetics as Blade. Obviously, she's less experienced. She's not as old. Of course, Blade is the man, the myth, the legend. If I had to give one an advantage, I would say, of course, Blade has the muscle advantage. But when it comes to comparing her to Blade, I would say she's a bit below, but she's not like a gazillions of times weaker. So she should be somewhere in the range, even with Blade having the advantage, obviously, right? This is crucial because this can help get an understanding of where her muscle actually lies. Blade is consistently a Spider-Man level tier muscle strength type being. Like, yeah, I know this video isn't about Blade, but in the lore and mythos of Blade, he's consistently portrayed to be a higher end vampire tier being in Marvel, a being that's got a 4 out of 7 in strength. Just a friendly reminder that Spider-Man tier beings, whether it's Miles or Peter, they usually have ratings of strength in the 4 out of 7 tier strength tier. Yes, this even goes for Peter Parker. Blade, Miles, or Peter, all are considered at least, this is a low ball, at least in the class 10 tons, beings that can lift at least 10 tons. I would say don't take the ton thing too seriously because even though they're class 10, we see them lift a lot more weight. Obviously, this is a good bare minimum low ball for Brie because we've actually seen Blade muscles clash with a vampiric Spider-Man. You know, Spider-Man-based Spider-Man's already scary. He's vampiric. He has more bloodlust. This adds up with the guidebooks. And I know this video isn't about Blade. This is a video about Bloodline, the daughter of Blade. I think this kind of stuff should apply to give you a real understanding of where her strength possibly could be, considering she has the genetics of Blade. I mean, she's too new to have a handbook entry because, yeah, it would be easier just to look up her handbook to see what strength tier she's in, but they don't really have one for her yet. She's too new. But I would say she should be at least a 4 out of 7 in strength, just like the rest of these higher end vampire tier type characters. Her dad's muscles are always clashing with Spider-Man tier being, whether it's Miles or even Peter himself that's vampiric. Blade is always in that muscle range of, you know, power, restraining him, muscling him to the ground, blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is, if she was in this situation to lift up this bus, if you was to say Bloodline could do this, I wouldn't disagree with you about lifting 10 tons. I mean, just remember what higher end vampire tiers can do to Spider-Man. Yeah, this is what higher end Morbius vampire higher end tiers can do to Spider-Man tiers. Knock them out. That's what I'm talking about. I would even push it farther when it comes to Bloodline to say she can lift more than 10 tons because quote unquote 10 tonners, they say, you know, class system, 10 ton class characters have shown, like Spider-Man has shown to be strong enough to lift 60 plus ton tanks, but he's a quote unquote 10 tonner. Yeah, 10 tons is not their limit. Same for Blade and Brielle, Bloodline. It should be the same concept. They're vampire tiers, Spider-Man tiers, blah, 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 higher end vampires. You could possibly say put her in a situation like this. If she's like, what, 50% of Blade's strength, either or, it doesn't even matter, even if she is below Blade. or Spider-Man. If she's somewhere in these guys' range, she might be able to duplicate these, lifting 60+ ton tanks feats as well. But where do you think she compares to Blade? Do you think Blade's 100 out of 100 and then she's like an 80 out of 100, 85 out of 100? Like, what number do you think she is when it comes to comparisons to Blade's muscle? Even though we know Blade is above her, she's less experienced. Where do you think she is in the hierarchy of muscle? Because if Blade is constantly a threat for Spider-Man tears in muscle, she shouldn't be that far behind, honestly. Even if Blade is above her, it shouldn't be an astronomical gap. It's a decent gap, but maybe not like an astronomical gap, if that makes sense. If you want to really get deep into the vampire and Spider-Man tier discussion, you can look at what Spider-Man has lifted to get an idea of what Blade higher end vampires can do or lift or possibly lift based on their strength tiers being the same, 4 out of 7, all of them being 4 out of 7. You remember that feat of Spider-Man having to lift or support the weight of the Daily Bugle building? Based on how big the Daily Bugle is, he lifted a portion of it. Obviously, he didn't lift all of it, but he doesn't need to. Just lifting a portion of the Daily Bugle building would still be 1,000 tons. This could give you an idea of Bloodline or Brielle or Blade's strength if their strength really is in the same ballpark with him, even if they're lower, slightly higher. If they're 80%, if they're 50% of Spider-Man's strength, 20% of Spider-Man's strength, that would still mean if they're in that ballpark with this guy in muscle, they would be able to lift thousands of tons. Yes, even if it's not all the weight of the building. That's what it means to be a Spider-Man tier person in raw muscle, lifting thousands of tons. They can lift thousands of tons, and Blade can do that too. She would by default technically be able to lift thousands of tons, right? Wouldn't she? Right? Obviously, this doesn't apply to every situation, but since her super strength is so high, based on all this evidence, shouldn't she be able to punch hard? I know there's some exceptions to this. Cyclops' punches or kicks or how much he can lift is nothing compared to what his blast power is. Same with characters like Iron Fist. He's not the biggest lifter, but his Iron Fist energy enhanced punch changes it because of energy around his fist. These characters are different because they strike hard or blast hard because of different reasons. But vampire tiers like Blade, Spider-Man, they're striking hard because they're super strength muscle in general. In this particular situation, this isn't Blade or Bloodline or nothing, but it's implied that the writers give characters all this lifting strength or super strength for a reason. Implied if they can press a certain amount of weight, that means they can hit really hard to your face. That's their implications when they tell you a character is strong. When you analyze how hard she just hits with blunt fists without even using hack-see vampire weapons or anything, just straight punches, just straight kicks, we see her do damage with the weight of her strike. I'm purposely showing you her punch without no like hack-see gear on purpose to show that the weight of her hits are crazy. She's constantly striking vampires with her bare hits. Her dad is a higher end vampire. It makes sense. She strikes people. They fly to a car. They literally fly in the air after a hit from her. She can kick and shatter through wood or just strike a vampire. Don't even get me started when she's bloodlusted. You can argue her strength gets a boost. She kicks through windows with ease. I think occasions like this kind of highlight that she's up there with them Spider-Man range tier type characters too. She's working together with Spider-Man tiers, elbowing beings that are taking hits from Spider-Man level beings. And her blunt kicks or just straight punches can do damage to these beings. We're talking about occasions with Miles Morales. Let me put it like this for you to understand. If Blade, Vampire, Spider-Man tier type characters like either Blade or Bloodline can really strike this hard, they would literally be able to shake or make localized earthquakes with their hits. That's the kind of power we're talking about. Being able to hit with over thousands of tons of force. That's what we're talking about. Like, just imagine all this strength I've been talking about when it comes to Bloodline. And imagine her putting this all on you with a piercing weapon. Characters with this much strength, imagine what her slicing power would feel like, on top of her having hacksy weapons that are anti-vampire type weapons. She's got hacks and strength on her side when you see her slicing these things up. Even Doombot, she can slice through metal consistently, even in covers. Tag teaming with other characters like Spider-Man and Blade, we see her slicing up beings, chopping, and withstanding hits from these beings, showing her durability. We see beings that are even giving Spider-Man tiers issue. She's fighting alongside these beings. I mean, look, let's look at when she fights actual high tier vampires. Like, I'm not only talking about Blade, but I'm talking about Deacon Frost clone type characters. That's why I say she got to be somewhere in their ballpark to be able to do these kind of things. Blade, Blade helping her murk him here. I don't make the rules. I mean, just them having fun. Playing baseball, her strike break the baseball bat just from the weight of her hit. So she's superhuman. This destructive power we're talking about, I wouldn't doubt if part of this is because of her raw combat speed due to her vampire nature. Because if her fighting speed is anything like her dad, her limbs can move faster than the eye can see, you could say. The way this implies it with her sword, it's implied it. And it's implied when it comes to her dad. Her dad is actually able to hit a Spider-Man tier character, even though the character has spider sense and the characters like literally can see a glimpse in the future via an alert system. They're still able to get the jump over characters like Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, it don't matter. Spider-Man level characters even dub Blade characters as fast. Spider-Man characters dubbing you or your dad as fast is a big deal because Spider-Man characters are used to dealing with characters that have the speed of light on their side. So that's a big deal. Saying that's implying that Blade or Brielle Bloodline type characters can fight or dang near light speed or something. This would imply nigh light speed type combat type ranges for her or Blade or vice versa. Tagging or reacting to beings that have a literal spider sense that gives them a heads up on danger and they're still able to land and hit these kind of characters. You know her combat speed is respectable. Remember how I said she's weaker in the daytime? Elektra even implied it. I shouldn't have been able to land that hit. So implying she knows she's depowered. She's still fast enough, even when she's depowered, to go get some of the best fighters in Marvel and get complimented by beings that call them quick. Elektra's implying at full power, you could say Elektra thinks she should be faster than her due to her genetics and physiology. Elektra's the same being we've seen in the past where bullets are literally mid-flight and she can block them. She's fast enough to cut bullets in half while mid-air. Yeah, these Marvel humans are built different. Like, look at all these bullets she can deflect. You see her deflecting them with a pipe. And this same Elektra believes that none of her hits should have landed on Bloodline, letting you know she believes Bloodline should be too fast for these characters. I think when Wolverine calls you're fast, you're fast. So that's why Elektra giving Bloodline props like that is impressive. X-23 Laura has similar speed when it comes to bullets and stuff. This is just normal stuff. And even when Brielle Bloodline was depowered, she still gets called quick by X-23, beings that can deflect and react to bullets with laughable ease while depowered. So full power, you know she's pretty quick if she's getting props from X-23. So her strength on top of her raw speed, all those factors put together could be a good explanation on why she can hit so freaking hard. Wouldn't you agree? She got Blade's genetics. It only makes sense. I love how the comics which Blade's daughter appears in answers questions that people want to know about, like how come some vampires turn into dust and some don't. It was answered here, the strain. Some bloodlines are powerful ancient, some are just coffin mode and old resentments curdling the blood. Basically, some are higher end vampires, some are like lower end vampires, basically. But anyway, when it comes to her physiology, I may or may not have mentioned this earlier, but she has a lot of similarities to her dad when it comes to strength and all that good stuff, just less experience because Blade is a veteran. She's not. She's newer. She has to find methods to try to control her thirst. That's why Blade is helping her protect herself and others. There are modified versions of the syringes he carries. It'll help that bloodlust from creeping up on you. And it'll help her hold on to her humanity a lot better. Bonding time. So while it is true she's a daywalker like her dad, which makes her not have the same standard vampire weaknesses, she still has, you could argue, one weakness, is that freaking thirst. She gets these crazy cravings. But at the same time, it is narrated she has perks like being able to heal faster than normal people. There's comic examples you can look at to see what we're talking about when it comes to her thirst taking over. Just kind of goes in full-blown vampire bloodlust mode. It was this occasion with her dad, Blade. You can see her kind of shift, going full-blown vampire-ish, uncontrollable rage monster type mode. Kind of makes her feel horror movie-ish. As of this point that I've read in her comics so far, she literally has inconsistent power levels. She thinks of it as random. Right here, she used to have night vision, but why not now? She doesn't. Her powers are kind of like made to be inconsistent right now because this is a common reoccurrence, or how she's like, oh, my reflexes are better now for some reason. Like her power levels goes up and down and she doesn't really understand the reasoning. Like, she doesn't have the weakness of other vampires being killed by the sunlight, but during the day, apparently her power is at a weaker state on some depowered type stuff. Maybe this is an early weakness in her early development. Maybe they will change this in the future comics. What do you think? So I guess if you understand her physiology, you can kind of catch her off guard, fight her during the daytime, you would have a better chance of beating her, I would say. But that's the very reason she has training by her dad to make sure people can't just catch her off guard just because she's not at full strength, because she's strongest in the dark. That's where fighting skill comes in handy, to where if somebody does catch her off guard. Like, you even see it on her training sessions with Blade. The whole point of this is so you won't be caught at a weak point. He's trying to teach her self-control, whether her power fluctuates on or off or not. Blade wants her to be ready. Like, she's progressively getting better with her skills and etc. Blade even admits it. He admits little by little he has to get a little more tougher on her during the battle training sessions. Blade is teaching her there's no such thing as fighting dirty. Blade wants her to win against vampires or humans. It doesn't matter. There's even occasions where she improvises, uses battle IQ, recognizes that characters are getting hurt from a certain element, uses that weapon more because she saw what this element did to the said vampire, even when she didn't really know what was going on. This is battle IQ, improvising, thinking while the battle is going on. We've seen her agility, jump around the battlefield, but they seem to emphasize they want the reader to know she's not as experienced as her father. we know. She still seems to have decent experience using a blade, melee type weapons like her dad still. We've seen her legit have training sessions with some of the best fighters like Black Panther and Avengers and such, literally being taught by the most experienced heroes. Spider-Man, they're literally in a classroom learning. Training sessions with X-23 and Elektra. Notice how they're making sure they're training her when it's sunny outside. Make sure she can't just rely on her super strength and such. This is a great training method. So imagine if she gets good in the sun fighting high high tier fighters like Electro or X-23. Imagine how strong or fast she would be with all this fighting skill with her full power when it's nighttime. Imagine that. Speaking of weapons, she has a lot of different weapons like her dad, anti-vampire weapons on top of it, wood, stakes she can use. The interesting thing about her wood is that she literally got a special piece of gear, like a splinter of the world tree itself. Honestly, I wouldn't even look at this as wood. I would look at this like a cosmic higher dimensional artifact if it's a piece of a splinter of the world tree itself. We ain't even going to get into the cosmology of the world tree and Marvel and stuff. Oh my goodness. The tree of Yggdrasil has all the different realms and universes. Yeah, you see it. You visually see it. That's why her having this as a piece of gear is actually crazy. You could argue this can make her hurt higher tier characters. You can argue she has boots that have a little cross on it, which is good for these kind of enemies. You could say these boots make her, via hacks, since these are basically kryptonites to certain demon-ish hell lord type beings. You could say because of these special boots, she can technically harm beings she shouldn't be able to harm, like Blackheart level beings that should be out of her league technically. She's even surprised, oh, pure silver works on demon types just like vampires. And I think crosses works just like how you see in those horror movies like The Conjuring, the cross, the symbolic nature of it. The crosses being good things to fight demon type characters. You can say she has this to her advantage as well. That's why she has silver lined cruciform boots for stomping vampires and any number of magical foes to dust. It's implied her usual gear is garlic, holy water, crosses. She even uses gear similar to what you see in the Blade movies. She even used this kind of gear with a normal blade and just used both of them at the same time. These vampire tears are nothing to mess around with. How far do you all think they're going to take Bloodline before she vanishes out of the blue and nobody knows where she goes in Marvel? You know how Marvel forgets about a lot of characters. But before I get going, y'all, I got to say thanks for the donos. You got to have some kind of respect for Bloodline, Blade's daughter. Like, share, subscribe. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.